Good afternoon, everybody. I officially open this ordinary meeting of Council on the 9th of June 2021 and remind those present in the gallery to turn your mobile phones off if you've got them. Acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledge the Gundungurra and Thorawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respects to elders, both past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. The civic prayer. Let us meet in this council chamber in a spirit of fellowship and goodwill to represent all members of the community in its cultural and religious diversity, to be honest and objective in all our deliberations, to respect the view of residents, the rights of all to express their opinions without fear or favour, and to make decisions for the common good of the community. There are no apologies. Adoption of minutes of previous meetings. The minutes of the meeting of the 12th of May. I would move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 12th of May be adopted as a correct record of proceedings of that meeting and declare that carried. The extraordinary meeting of the 20th of May, I would move that the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of Council held on 20 May be adopted as a correct record of proceedings of that meeting and declare that carried. General Manager, declarations of interest.
Thank you, Mr. May. I have one declaration of interest, and that's from the Administrator Viv May. In relation to the fees payable to mayors and councillors, 2120, item 11.3. He's claimed a non-pecuniary, non-significant pecuniary interest. And what it is a non-pecuniary, I'm the local government remuneration tribunal, and non-significant, administrative fee relates to the 2021 determination prior to my appointment and will not be increased.
Thanks for that. It's a bit of an unusual one, isn't it? Now call public forum Mr. Malley to address the council on the eco-tourist facility at 198 Foxgrove Road, Canyon Lee. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, wherever you're comfortable.
Very much for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of the. Already, yeah, I can hear myself through the speakers. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak today. I believe I've been caught up in a process that's failed me, both historically and also currently pertaining to my ecotourism DA 19/1650. History will show that Moreton Park gained approval and consent for the amenities block, the cookhouse, for tourism for up to 43 students and 3 teachers. Consent was granted on the 10th of April 1972, minute number 660/72. And I've got all the paperwork. I've got a folder about this thick. Here's a copy of the 660/72. So it was approved. The structures, the amenities block, the cookhouse, and the tourism business of students. I've also got a document showing all the details of those events. And there's some more paperwork here which I won't go into. I've got lots and lots of photos. I've got historical evidence of people that went there and stayed over many, many years, right up until 2009. I've got photographs in 1979. I've got the photograph of the local info board at Canyon Lee showing Moreton Park. This is a tourist information board. The only locations on this board are tourism locations. And my farm, Moreton Park, is on that. My neighbours aren't. No one else on Foxgrove Road. No one. Only Moreton Park. The King's Rally went there for 17 years, right up until 2009. There's photos of the cabins and students. There's photographs of the other events there. So unfortunately, Council also has in possession 2 letters in their files, one dated the 29th of February 1988 and one 17th of July 2012. Both letters categorically state there were no approvals at all for structures and no consent given for tourism. It's wrong. It's all here. And I've raised this a couple of times with council, with the mayor, with the general manager, with some of the other senior managers, asking them to sit down and talk and tell me why there's this anomaly. It's not just me. There were previous owners of Moreton Park that were caught up in these errors. These are absolute total errors that need to be rectified by council. These letters either need to be withdrawn or a new letter written that reverses what they said back then. It's wrong. All the history is there. So I've been caught up in that as well, personally, and it's cost me a lot of money because of that. So having done all that, I've then, to solve all this, I went down the DA path. And because of the zoning changes, tourism's not allowed, ecotourism is. I can do ecotourism. I used a consultant, a very well-known consultant that everyone knows, and we used a large number of other consultants and wrote quite a significant paper for such a small, it's a $30,000 thing. I'm not building anything, it's all there. It's camping, it's low impact. I have a policy of you come, you leave, no footprint. Anyway, so I submitted the DA for tourism facility, and council received all that, and all the internal experts and external experts all agreed that we complied to 5.13, and the recommendation was to approve the DA. It went to a council meeting, and unfortunately the council meeting rejected it. Then I submitted the review. The internal review used a consultant planner to review my DA, and also the panel, based on that recommendation, have come back and said, no, we're rejecting it this time. Nothing changed. So all the experts within council, the external experts like New South Wales Water, RFS, all agreed that we complied, but something changed. So both internal experts and external both said, yep, it's all good. So I'd like to just finish on saying this. I know I'm not asking questions, but it's in the form of a question, but I'm not asking it of you. Why is it the council's longest serving senior DA accessing officer of over 20 years believes our application satisfied all LEP requirements, yet the consulting planner and panel does not? The original DA was recommended for approval twice, but rejected by feuding councillors playing politics. Now, all of a sudden, the proposal allegedly does not satisfy council policy, despite given endorsement, concurrence from every department within council and externals such as Water New South Wales and RFS. Can someone please explain that to me?
Mr. Valley, did you make a similar presentation to the panel?
I did.
Thank you. So you were heard by them as well? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is an interim administrator minute. The Minister for Local Government, the Hon Shelley Hancock MP, announced on 27 May that my appointment as interim administrator would be extended for 3 months, and the order to further suspend Wingecarribee Shire Council was gazetted on 4 June. I table the gazettal notice and will ensure that it's attached to the minutes. It's under section 438M and 4380 of the Act. The reasons the Minister outlined for extending the suspension include to provide additional time for a new General Manager to embed improvements to the organisation, work on the restructure of the organisation under a new General Manager to assist residents in communicating with Council, work that needs to be undertaken to improve the work, health and safety conditions of the Council's workforce, to continue the work being undertaken to restore the community's confidence in the Council, and to improve Council's exercise of statutory functions. Residents may be assured that I will continue in the role with both enthusiasm and commitment. Congratulations to Berrima on winning the Best Town Destination in New South Wales for population under 5,000 category. It was an honour to present the award to Steve Horton during the Berrima launch of Pie Time, and a big well done to all involved. Today is Thank a First Responder Day. During recent times, with bushfires, floods and the pandemic, the Shire has witnessed the commitment from our first responders in doing all they can to protect us. The paramedics, police, firefighters and emergency services make personal sacrifices every day for the well-being and safety of our community. On behalf of the Council and the community, I would like to sincerely thank all first responders in the Southern Highlands for the incredible work they undertake. Community outreach visits have allowed me to see firsthand and obtain a better appreciation of the unique environment of Wingecarribee, and I thank and acknowledge the openness of over 200 individual community members, 37 community groups and associations who I have met, and the generosity of their welcome. I will continue to meet with community members on request, but the outreach visits have been completed. The discussions have been wide and varied and have provided me with an important tool to gain better understanding of the community's view of the Council. They have provided a base to work with the Acting General Manager to develop solutions to fix areas that have been raised as reoccurring themes, and this contribution has been needed and is valued. I understand that a report will be presented to Council at the next meeting following the resolution of 12 May in relation to the Southern Highlands Regional Shelter, Animal Shelter, and thank staff for arranging a visit to the site yesterday. I now better understand the issues and urgency of addressing what I consider to be unacceptable working conditions of staff. I'm also concerned that Council is meeting its statutory obligations and whether they are being confused by a memorandum of understanding with the Friends of Wingecarribee Animal Shelter. These matters must and will be addressed during the administration period, and I've asked the General Manager to expand the scope of the report to address same and, if necessary, to obtain independent professional assistance on some of the policies of the shelter. The work of the Rural Fire Service and State Emergency Service, both at voluntary and professional level, cannot be underestimated by any community, and the recent fires and floods only underscore their importance in the Wingecarribee Shire Council area. One-to-one meetings have been held with the RFS and SES leadership in the Shire, and decisions taken in relation to water tanks at Balmoral, Penrose and Wingelow. In addition, there is a need for water tanks at Canyon Lee, Bulleo and High Range Joadja, and possibly east of the railway track at Penrose. The staff are preparing a report for the July Council meeting to fund these projects without further delay. The allocation of $100,000 from bushfire grants resulted in a number of very good proposals costing far in excess of the funds available. In consultation with the staff, the following has been agreed. Bundanoon, Glowworm Glen reconstruction of pedestrian bridge, $12,000. Wingelow, Bill O'Reilly Park furniture, $20,000. Penrose Park equipment, $18,000. Balmoral Village, external lights, $10,000. Hilltop entry signs, $5,200, and that will add on to money already provided by the Council. Balmoral entry signs, $12,000. Wombian Caves road signage, guideposts and reflectors along the road, noting that there is a substantial Commonwealth grant for major works, but we're allocating $17,800 as interim amounts. And Balmoral Village Hall's sanding and polishing, $5,000. The Council's relationship with the SES has not been good in recent years and, in my view, has undervalued the role they play in our community. The Shire SES is the primary rescue unit for all incidents. While their facilities at Mittagong are adequate, Mossvale leaves a lot to be desired and negotiations for improvements have been protracted. The Taylor Street facility is not operating satisfactorily and impacts on local leadership and the provision by the New South Wales Government of the latest equipment, including a heavy rescue vehicle. The Bowman Road Mossvale site, purchased by Council for the new animal shelter, has its challenges, but in my view would be an ideal location to also house the SES. Council will need to fund a major proportion of any new facility, and I've asked the Acting General Manager to report on the matter in conjunction with the animal shelter report. To be very clear, I'm not suggesting that one be shortchanged for the other, but that both be provided to cater for the Shire's needs while respecting the Council's statutory obligations. Destination Southern New South Wales is the tourism and economic development organisation for the Southern Highlands and is a so-called business unit of Wingecarribee Shire Council. However, as an arm of Council, it is essential that it operates within the requirements of the Local Government Act. It has come to my attention that a number of fees have been charged unlawfully by Destination Southern Highlands. These fees have not been adopted as part of the Council's annual fees and charges as required under Section 377 of the Local Government Act. While these fees may be necessary for the operation of the business, they have not been legally applied. To rectify this situation, it is my view that the fees paid over the previous 12 months should be refunded. These fees include partnership membership fee, product consignment, tickets, accommodation and accommodation site inspection fees that total in the order of $150,000. The Acting General Manager supports my view and is having a report on charges and fees prepared, he has also initiated an independent audit of some expenditure. The future operation of Destination Southern Highlands will also be addressed in the Council restructure, which will hopefully come before the Council at the July meeting. As part of the community update at the meeting held on 12 May, I requested staff to prepare a warts and all report on the Council's response and recovery efforts to the 2019-2020 summer bushfires. Following further consideration and the substance of potential conflict of matters already being raised, staff have recommended an independent review be undertaken for this report. Mr Dave Owens from Risk E Business Consultants has been engaged to undertake this independent report. Mr Owens is a former Deputy Commissioner of the New South Wales Police Force with 30 years service. He has also been a State and Regional Recovery Coordinator for the New South Wales Government and as such has extensive knowledge as to the establishment and running of recovery committees, funding applications and mayoral relief funds. Mr Owens has worked with many local governments to review their emergency management recovery procedures and most recently he co-led the New South Wales Government independent bushfire inquiry which resulted in 76 recommendations. I have previously noted that the consultant's report relating to development issues is still being prepared by virtue of the large number of residents who have requested an independent hearing. Ernest Consulting, Malcolm Ryan Director, has now provided an interim issues report to me and a confidential operating report to the General Manager, and I table the interim report dated 7 June and it will be on the internet before you get home. The report is damning and whilst it makes a number of recommendations, it's my view they are best left until the final report so a holistic approach can be taken. Having said that, I acknowledge and endorse the swift action of the Acting General Manager in addressing some of the priority issues. One housekeeping matter that needs to be addressed in relation to the appointment of the new General Manager. In adopting the recommendation for the appointment of Ms. Lees and Ms. Campbell, I failed to include a recommendation that the common seal be affixed to the contract, and the following addresses that oversight. I move this minute be received and noted, and that Council's common seal be placed on the contract of employment between Ms. Lisa, Ms. Campbell and Council, and declare that carried. At the end of the meeting, if you want to come, there's plenty of copies of that minute, but I think it's important, while they're lengthy, I think it's important that the community understands where we're up to. I said at the last meeting, things are moving fast. Things are about to start to move faster, and we are making real progress in restoring confidence and trust back in this council, or in my view, at any rate. If we now move on to council reports, General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. I'd call on John Crawford to address the gathering.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager, and thank you, Mr. May. The purpose of this report is to inform Council about the creation of the Village Coordinator role. The Interim General Manager has visited a number of towns and villages as part of his information findings since taking the chair. In those discussions, it has become apparent that the villages have not been receiving the customer service experience they deserve, or they are having issues navigating Council. As such, a role will be created within the customer service team called the Village Coordinator. The purpose of this role will be to catch requests as they come into Council, to assist with navigating Council by acting as a concierge, ensuring that residents are directed to the right section and assisted along the way, supply the General Manager with regular reports on the progress of the requests from villagers, and to advocate for a better understanding of the importance of villages within the Council administration. The role has been funded as part of the draft 21-22 budget.
Thank you very much for that. And this is in response to my travels around all the villages. If I could actually just apologise to Fitzroy Falls. I've been out there 4 times, twice to private homes, and I didn't actually have a meeting out there, but I think anybody who wanted to see me has seen me out there. Look, also in relation to this matter, I am tying the council's communication with villages to the new General Manager's performance agreement, and that will ensure that this works. In relation to item 8.1, I would move the staff recommendation on page 2 and declare that carried. 10.1.
Oh, thank you. I'll call on Rachel Ford to address the council.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. The New South Wales Government have committed $20 million over the 3 rounds of the Everyone Can Play grant program. The program aims to create inclusive play spaces for communities, ensuring that everyone can play. Council's adopted play space strategy is closely aligned to the principles of the Everyone Can Play guidelines, responding to the need for high play values and playgrounds that the community can easily access, that encourage longer periods of stay, and include a variety of play opportunities. Council was previously successful in obtaining $200,000 in grant funding from the Everyone Can Play 2019-20 round to contribute toward the playground and public toilet renewal at Seymour Park in Mossvale. These upgrade works are currently underway with expected completion in July. Council applied for funding through the 2020-21 round for the Church Road Oval Play Space in Mossvale at $74,000 and Cook Street Park Play Space in Mittagong at $81,000. Council has recently received formal notification from the funding body that both applications have been successful. The funding provided by the New South Wales State Government will match existing funding included in Council's draft 2021-22 operational plan and budget for the 2 playgrounds. Staff recommend the funding be formally accepted to allow for the next phase of the project to commence, being community consultation of the concept designs. Works are intended to be completed by June 2022.
Thank you very much for that. In relation to item 10.1, I'd move the recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 4 of the business paper and declare that carried. 10.2, General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. I'll call on Rachel Ford again to address the council.
Thank you very much. The Fixing Local Roads program is jointly funded by the state and federal governments. The program aims to reduce the maintenance backlog for local roads in regional and rural areas. Council applied for funding for the rehabilitation of Kirkham Street, Mossville, under round 2 of the program. Kirkham Street is in poor condition and requires pavement rehabilitation, curb replacement, and line marking improvements. The estimated cost of works is $1.7 million. Council applied for $1,275,000 through Fixing Local Roads, with Council contributing $425,000 towards the project. The works will be delivered over the 2021-22 and 22-23 financial years. Staff recommend the funding be formally accepted by Council to allow for the design works to progress.
Thank you very much. In relation to item 10.2, I would move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 9 of the business paper and declare that carried. Next item 10.3, General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. I would now again call on Rachel Ford.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. In August 2020, the New South Wales government announced the launch of a $250 million New South Wales Public Spaces Legacy Program as part of ongoing work to protect the health of the community, provide economic and job stimulus in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and deliver a legacy of safe, quality, public and open space. The New South Wales Public Legacy Program supports the Planning Reform Action Plan by providing incentives and guidance to councils seeking to match the objectives of the Faster Assessments Program through their own Local Assessment Acceleration Program. Under the program, councils successful in meeting their accelerated planning targets between 1st of September 2020 and 30th of June 2021 are eligible to apply for a predetermined funding allocation to deliver a high-quality public and open space legacy project. Wingecarribee Shire Council falls under the Regional City Council category, eligible for $3 million in funding if the program targets are met. Council made application to participate in the program in August 2020 and was invited to submit a grant application in March 2021. Council submitted an application for upgrades to Corbett Plaza and Corbett Gardens in Bowral CBD. Council was advised on the 6th of May 2021 that its application had progressed to the next stage and that a funding agreement needed to be entered into by the 21st of May 2021. Under the program, works must be completed by the 31st of December 2022. Council has identified a number of risks associated with the project that will impact delivery of the works by the deadline. These risks are outlined within the report on page 16 of the business paper. Instead, Council intends to propose an alternative space, open space legacy project for the grant, the Bong Bong Common Master Plan. The master plan was adopted by Council in May 2019 and is its vision for the development and maintenance of this unique parkland. The master plan creates connectivity between the eastern and western sides of the common and provides opportunities for visitors to learn the history of the Aboriginal heritage, as well as of the first European settlement for the Southern Highlands. It is marked by improving parking and access, as well as creating pathways through and around the common, providing opportunities for interpretation of its long history and appreciation of the rich biodiversity associated with the common and the Wingecarribee River. As the expected cost of delivering the master plan is $5.3 million, not all of the works identified can be undertaken. However, it would provide opportunity to deliver a significant amount of the works. Council has already approved the delivery of the Stage 1A package of works for the Bong Bong Common Master Plan, and the risks associated with the remaining works packages are considered significantly lower than the Corbett Gardens and Plaza project. Last week, the funding body confirmed that an alternative proposal would be allowed, but it needed to be submitted by midday 9th of June. Council staff have met this submission deadline earlier today. As such, staff recommend the alternative project submission be formally approved and that an additional recommendation be included, acknowledging the submission has already been made in accordance with the funding body's requirements.
Thank you very much. And could you pass on to your team appreciation that they're scoping and now identifying risk and, informing the council of those matters. And I think that's, progress. I'm not being disrespectful, but I think it's progress. In relation to item 10.3, I'd move the recommendation on the business paper, the original one, and now the new number 2 as noted. Everyone can see that on the screen? Well, 2 says, council note the alternate, the other, they're not going up, only my one is. But council note the alternative project application was submitted on 9 June by 12 o'clock in accordance with the requirements of the funding body. I declare that carried. Next item is 10.4, funding application, Stronger Communities, round 4.
Thank you, Mr May. I'll call again on Rachel Ford.
You're the money lady.
Thank you. The Stronger Country Communities Fund was established in 2017 by the New South Wales Government to deliver local projects that enhance the lives and well-being of regional communities. Round 4 of the funding will see a further $100 million made available, with up to $50 million for projects that enhance female sporting facilities and increase female participation in sport in regional New South Wales. The remaining funding is available for other local community and sporting infrastructure, including street beautification, community programs, and local events. This funding opportunity opened on the 1st of May 2021, with applications closing Friday the 25th of June. Wingecarribee Shire Council received notification from the funding body that $1,051,982 has been allocated for projects within its local government area. Councils are required to rank projects in order of priority where combined applications exceed their nominated funding allocation for the LGA. Additionally, the grant guidelines specify a minimum of $50,000 for project funding, with submissions over $1 million requiring a 25% co-contribution. Eligible applicants include regional councils and joint organizations, non-government organizations, community organizations registered as incorporated associations, and local Aboriginal land councils. In addition to the advertising undertaken by the Department of Regional New South Wales, council staff contacted regular facility hirers and management committees to advise of the grant opportunity. In order to submit competitive projects and complete the application process, shovel-ready designs and costings were encouraged for infrastructure projects that involve construction of new or upgrades to existing facilities. The need to ensure that projects were shovel-ready with a high degree of confidence over expected project costs has meant that a number of proposals have not been included in this round. Council staff will continue to work with these groups to ensure these projects are advanced sufficiently for future external funding opportunities which are identified. A list of the current proposed projects is included as attachment 1 of the report. Currently, there are 6 projects listed for submission by council and 2 directly by the community organizations. Council staff recommend this list be provisionally approved to allow the grant submissions to be developed. A final list of council's project submissions and any other requests for letters of support by community organizations will be reported to the extraordinary meeting of council on the 23rd of June for final approval.
Thank you very much for that, and I certainly endorse what you're suggesting. In relation to item 10.4, I'd move the staff recommendation 1, 2 and 3 as outlined on page 38 of the business paper and declare that carried. 10.5, review of the local traffic committee terms of reference.
Thank you, Mr. May. I'll now call on Rachel to provide the last report.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Mr. May, the local traffic committee is established to provide advice to council, which enables council to meet its responsibilities to transport for New South Wales as part of the powers delegated to it under the Transport Administration Act 1988. The committee is an independent technical advisory committee that assists council to fulfill its responsibilities. The committee is established in accordance with a guide to the delegation to councils for the regulation of traffic, including the operation of traffic committees, published by Transport for New South Wales. The committee is not a committee within the meaning of the Local Government Act. Its operating arrangements are detailed in the guidelines. The recent suspension of the council has triggered a review of the terms of reference of the local traffic committee. The proposed changes to the terms of reference are designed to reinforce the technical nature of the committee, to ensure that council's parking rangers are represented on the committee, to provide meaningful input on parking proposals, and to reduce the overall formality of committee meetings to encourage free and open discussion between members in accordance with the guidelines. The changes also seek to reinforce the committee's ability to permit members of the public to address it on traffic-related matters. Staff recommend the draft terms of reference be adopted, and in the interest of transparency, it is further proposed that the local traffic committee meetings be open to the public and managed in accordance with the section 5.3.4 of the guidelines. Thank you.
Look, thank you very much for this recommendation. This also flowed from my view that all these committees should be open to the public. And in speaking to the staff, to put it beyond doubt, they have added in clause 1, after attachment 1, including amendments to section 6.5, public participation, to allow for meetings to be open to the public and managed in accordance with section 5.3.4 of Transport for New South Wales, a guide to the delegation to councils for the regulation of traffic, including the operation of traffic committees. I would move that recommendation as amended in 1, so it's in effect still the staff's amended recommendation, 1 as amended, 2 and 3, and declare that carried. And if I could just say that I would hope that this remains a technical committee following the elections in September. The politicising of such committees does no favours to communities. Um, 10.6, waiving of development application fees on council-owned or controlled land. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. I now call on Damien Jenkins to report.
Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to propose that Council adopt the formal position that all development application fees for development occurring on council-owned or controlled land for not-for-profit and community organisations be waived. With a view to supporting community-based infrastructure projects, Council can exercise its discretion to waive development application fees on council-owned land. The waiving of development application fees would reduce some financial burden for not-for-profit or community organisations. This would also include the waiving of any developer contributions which may apply. Mr. May, to ensure that we also include non-building and construction-related activities which require a development application, such as events, I put forward an amended recommendation for recommendation 1, which reads that Council adopt the formal position that all development application fees for activities requiring development consent on council-owned or controlled land for not-for-profit and community organisations be waived.
Thanks very much for that. This is a huge issue with the villages, and it's something that's been restated to me on a number of occasions, and something that I think we're now going to fix. Unfortunately, we can't do much about the necessity for development applications. They're state government matters, But I'm hopeful that Mr Ryan in his final report will deal with that matter. The council's got to make it easier, not harder, for residents in preparing those documents. But that's no reflection on the staff. It's just the reality of the place we find ourselves in. Also, the Botanic Gardens at Bowral were up for huge fees. I just don't understand why a council would charge fees to community-based organisations when in reality the assets will become the council's asset at the end of the day. So I think this is a fair way of doing it, and I thank the officers for their recommendation. Accordingly, 10.6, I would move the new number 1, that council adopt the formal position of all development application fees for activities requiring development consent on council-owned land or controlled land for not-for-profit and community organisations be waived to A, B and C as on the business paper, and declare that carried. 10.7 investment report. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr May. I'll call again on Damien Jenkins.
This report presents Council's investment portfolio as at 30th of April 2021 with a balance of $182.78 million. All investments have been made in accordance with legislation and council policy. The return on Council's investment portfolio continues to decline, with the average rate of return being 0.72%. Council staff actively seek the best available rates within its investment policy during what has become a protracted low interest rate environment.
Thanks for that. I'm afraid low interest rates are a reality, but some people love them. In relation to item 10.7, I'd move the officer's recommendation on page 54 of the business paper and declare it carried. 10.8, proposed road closure. Robertson.
Thank you, Mr May. I'll call on Mandy McCullough.
Thank you, Mr McMahon. Mr May, the purpose of this report is to seek council approval to undertake community consultation for the proposed closure of Part Conjeeboy Street, Robertson. The area of proposed closure is the site of the Robertson Rural Fire Service Station, which was constructed within the road reserve in 2008. The Robertson RFS would like to undertake work at the station, which requires development consent. These works include extension of the existing car parking area and construction of a retaining wall. It is proposed that the segment upon which the station is constructed be closed and first title created for the property. If, after community consultation, the road closure is approved, the segment of road will be closed and title to the newly created lot will vest in council for use by the Robertson RFS. If submissions are received during the period of public consultation, a further report will be forwarded to a future meeting of council for determination.
Thanks for that. In relation to item 10.8, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 60 of the business paper, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and declare that carried. We now move to item 10.9, compulsory acquisition, Range Road, Mittagong.
Thank you, Mr May. I'll call again Mandy McCullough.
Thank you, Mr McMahon. Mr May, the purpose of this report is to provide council with an update on negotiations that have taken place for the acquisition of land to facilitate construction of a new roundabout at the intersection of Railway Parade, Range Road and Kohler Street, Mittagong. In February 2021, council provided formal approval to acquire land for the new roundabout, which will be constructed in conjunction with replacement of the Range Road overpass bridge by Transport New South Wales. Following council resolution in February, a valuation was obtained and a formal offer made to the landowner. After receipt of council's offer, the landowner, following due diligence, obtained their own independent valuation, a copy of which was provided to council. A significant disparity existed between council's valuation and the landowner's valuation, which resulted from the different valuation approaches taken by the respective valuers. Accordingly, both valuations were referred to an independent valuer for assessment and advice. The independent valuer concluded that the approach to assessment of compensation was appropriately adopted in the landowner's report. Agreement on compensation has now been reached with the landowner, and the matter is reported to Council for updated resolution. Civil works for construction of the new roundabout are scheduled to begin in July. Accordingly, it is crucial that acquisition of the land be finalised without delay to ensure the construction schedule can be delivered. Resolving the land acquisition will ensure the timely reopening of Colo Street, Mittagong, once bridge replacement works have been completed.
Thank you. You win some, you lose some. In relation to item 10.9, I'd move the officer's recommendation on page 64, 1, 2 and 3 and declare that carried. 10.10, water supply provision, northern and southern villages. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. I made a mistake. There is one more from Rachel Ford.
Thank you. Balmoral is the northernmost village in the Wingecarribee Shire. The nearest reticulated potable water services are located approximately 5 kilometres away in Hilltop. Penrose and Wingelow are located at the southern end of the Shire. The nearest reticulated potable water services are located in Bundanoon, approximately 7 kilometres from Penrose. Potable water is currently available in these villages via rainwater tanks, and water carters. Currently, there is no provision in Council's long-term financial plan for the provision of reticulated potable water services to these villages. In 2014 and 2015, Council completed community consultation in each of these villages to gauge the support for reticulated water services. At that time, there was not sufficient support to pursue the scheme, and Council resolved to defer the matter for 5 years and reassess the community views. The infrastructure required for the scheme is significant, and the high-level preliminary cost estimates are $20 million for Penrose and Wingelow and $14 million for Balmoral. In 2020, financial modelling was completed to identify the financial impacts of the new village water services on the typical residential bill. The details of this can be found on page 72 of the business paper. As the proposal to provide reticulated potable water services to the villages will require a significant investment, a robust approval process will be required. A number of gateway approvals are planned, and each stage will require approval by Council to progress. The first stage is community consultation to gauge current community support for the proposed reticulated water services. Council staff recommend that community consultation be approved to commence in October 2021 and be reported back to Council thereafter.
Thank you very much. And look, this is an excellent report and puts to bed, in my view, a lot of myths that I heard when I was touring the villages. Some may consider the scenarios of if the water schemes are finished by 2035, 40, it's $55 per assessment, or if quicker in 2026, $100 per rate assessment. But this is intergenerational, and people have to realise who live where they have water now that somebody else has paid for theirs as well. And I would encourage the council to really move forward with this. I know there'll be a kickback in the towns, but Wingecarribee, we were all in this together, and I think that people just must recognise that so you can move on. But I'll be long gone before all this gets going. But I think it's pretty clear if I was here how I'd be voting. In relation to item 10.1, 10.10. I would move the recommendation on page 71 and 2 and declare that carried. 10.11, Southern Regional Livestock Exchange upgrade.
Thank you, Mr. May. I'd like to call on Ned Tripkovic.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to provide Council and the broader community with an update on the Southern Regional Livestock Exchange upgrade project. The Southern Regional Livestock Exchange is the Shire's livestock sale yard and is located on Berrima Road in Moss Vale. The facility was acquired by Council in 1962 and has had numerous upgrades, including construction of the administrative building in 1991 and the livestock yard roofing more recently in 2011. Cattle sales are held every Wednesday for 50 weeks of the year with an output of approximately 60,000 head of cattle per year. Resulting from the need to improve the facility for compliance with modern sale yard requirements, Council developed a business case and applied for grant funding from Restart New South Wales Regional Growth Economic Activation Fund. In March 2019, Council was successful in obtaining $5.248 million in grant funding for the proposed works. Due to the vastly different disciplines of work under the funding deed, Council staff determined it was necessary to separate the work elements via multiple contracts. This would also allow Council to commence works on the less complex elements which did not require extensive design development. The 6 unique work packages include new load cells to the Selling Arena weighbridge, replacement of Selling Arena seating, the livestock yards and animal handling facility replacement, CCTV installation of a compliant lift to access the Selling Arena, and a new driveway access constructed off Abattoir Road. To date, works complete include the load cells, arena seating and CCTV installation. Contracts have been awarded for the remaining work packages. The lift is currently in design finalisation within a design and construct contract. The driveway access road is scheduled for completion in July 22 via a construct-only contract, and the livestock yards, being the largest individual work packet, is a design and construct contract. The livestock yard element has had a delay in commencement resulting from legacy issues associated with fire safety system compliance and has severely delayed the timeliness in obtaining the construction certificate. In-depth details of all these discrete work packages and their status is provided within this report. Resulting from the delays, a formal change request has been submitted to Restart New South Wales and approval has been obtained for the revised completion date being April 2022. Ultimately, the Southern Regional Livestock Exchange upgrade project will improve the facility to be compliant with modern sale yard operating requirements and meeting the users' expectations of the facility's infrastructure. Following the interim administrator's concerns about the lack of financial information in this report, a second recommendation has also been put forward to demonstrate the actual and forecast funding allocations for all the discrete packages of work within the funding deed. Thank you.
Look, thank you very much for responding to the questions I asked on Monday about costs. I don't have to read this out because it's long. If residents want to have a quick read of it, I could say one thing that does concern me is what happened in 2011. There's just no history for that in the place. That's correct. Look, I went by coincidence. I went up here went to the auctions last Wednesday. I quite enjoyed it. For someone who lives at Manly, the seventh biggest in the state, which is very, very good. It's a different method to what I used to see up at Armidale. But has everyone read it yet? Okay. I would move the recommendation on the screen, 1 and 2, and the reason why it's changed is just so the money figures are put in there for transparency, and I would declare that carried. Tender for the supply of magnesium hydroxide chemical dosing.
Thank you, Mr. May. I'll call on John Hook to present his report.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, the purpose of this report is to present the evaluation of the request for tender for the supply of magnesium hydroxide chemical dosing. As part of Council's ongoing operational maintenance programme for the sewer network, chemical dosing and odour monitoring has been conducted to minimise the impacts of septic sewage, which can lead to severe corrosion of assets and odour complaints in the community. In 2019, Council undertook a trial of magnesium hydroxide, which was found to control hydrogen sulphide concentrations, whilst protecting sewer treatment plants. This tender process formalised the engagement of an established contractor for supply and delivery of magnesium hydroxide and the additional option for consultancy and technical services for odour management and dosing optimisation. The tender was advertised from the 6th of April 2021 to the 27th of April 2021, and a total of 9 tender submissions covering both categories were received. All tenders were considered in accordance with the Local Government Act, the regulations and council's procurement policy. The tender evaluation panel have recommended Ixom operations. This recommendation is for both the supply and delivery of magnesium hydroxide and technical services for odour management and dosing optimisation. Ixom is established in the industry and undertakes similar works for the same applications around Australia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In relation to item 10.12, I would move the officer's recommendation 1 and 2 as outlined on page 84 of the business paper and declare that carried. We now move to 11.1, the Section 82 review of the Eco Tourist Facility at 198 Foxgrove Road, Canyon Lee.
Thank you, Mr. May. I'll call on Michael Park to present his report.
Thank you. This report relates to a Section 8.2 review of development application number 19/1650 for an eco-tourist facility at 198 Foxgrove Road in Canyon Lee. So the development application for an eco-tourist facility was initially considered by Council in February of this year and ultimately refused, with a number of reasons given for the refusal. The applicant has subsequently lodged a review of Council's determination under Section 8.2 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, with additional information provided to address the reasons for refusal given by Council. The review has been assessed by an independent planning consultant and was considered at the local planning panel meeting on the 2nd of June 2020-21, where the panel supported the recommendation to refuse the review of determination. So the panel's reasons for refusal are provided in the recommendation of the report. Namely, the panel were not satisfied that the development met the definition for an eco-tourist facility, that the proposed development does not satisfy the zone objectives, and the panel were not satisfied that the proposal met the relevant criteria of Clause 5.13 of Wingecarribee LEP in relation to eco-tourist facilities.
Thanks for that. We heard from Mr. Maley earlier that he had addressed the panel. Did the panel inspect this site?
Thank you. Yes, the panel attended the site. And
So all members of the panel inspected?
yeah, so the morning of the panel meeting, they went out on and attended all of the sites subject to the meeting that afternoon.
Thank you. In relation to this matter, I am not going to vary the recommendation of professional people on something like this. Mr. Maley, even though you have spoken to the council, you also had the opportunity to speak to the panel, which you said you did, and they have inspected the site. Accordingly, item 11.1, I'd move the recommendation of the panel as outlined on on pages 89 and 90 of the business paper 1 through to 6, and declare that carried. Next item. Uh, 11.2, planning proposal to rezone Gould. How do you pronounce that?
Excellent question. I think it's Goolanura National Park.
Thanks. General Manager?
Thank you.
I didn't
Thank
ask,
you,
I
Mr.
didn't ask you.
No, I wouldn't
No,
have been able to do it. I'll call on Michael Park to present his report.
Thank you. And this report relates to a planning proposal to rezone the recently gazetted Goolanura National Park in Canyon Lee to E1 National Parks and Nature Reserves under the Wingecarribee Local Environmental Plan. So the Goolanura National Park was formally notified in August of last year, and the proposed rezoning is largely considered an administrative matter to reflect the change in status of the recently notified national park. So it's intended that the planning proposal be prepared under Section 3.22 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, which provides for a fast-tracked approval process for administrative and minor matters such as these ones. So the matter was considered by the planning panel on the 2nd of June, where the panel supported the recommendation of the staff, which is printed in the report.
Thank you. In relation to 11.2, I would move the recommendation of the planning panel as outlined on page 105 of the business paper and declare that carried. Item 11.3.
Thank you, Mr May. I call on Claire Digger.
Thank you, Mr McMahon. Mr May, the Local Government Act 1993 provides that the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal is to determine the minimum and maximum fees payable to mayors and councillors each financial year. This report is to advise Council of the Tribunal's determination and request that Council determine the fees payable to the Mayor and Councillors of Wingecarribee Shire Council for the 2021-2022 financial year.
As already noted by the Acting General Manager, I am the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal, but it's a non-significant, doesn't affect my remuneration here. In relation to 11.3, on page 116, I'd move the officer's recommendation and declare that carried. Item 11.4, draft expenses and facilities for the Mayor and Councillors.
Thank you, Mr May. I call again Claire Digger.
Thank you, Mr McMahon. Mr May, the expenses and facilities for the Mayor and Councillors policy enables the reasonable and appropriate reimbursement of expenses and provisions of facilities to councillors and the Mayor to help them undertake their civic duties. In accordance with Council Resolution, minute number 99/21, the draft policy was placed on public exhibition from 12 April to 11 May 2021. No changes to the draft policy as exhibited are recommended.
Thank you. In relation to this matter, expenses on my part will be detailed in the Council's annual report fully. In relation to item 11.4, I would move the officer's recommendation outlined on page 135 of the business paper and declare that carried. 11.5, child safety policy.
Thank you, Mr May. I call again on Claire Digger.
Thank you, Mr McMahon. Mr May, the purpose of this report is to seek the adoption of a child safety policy. The policy affirms Council's commitment to providing a safe and positive environment for children and young people while they're on Council premises and using Council services. It has been developed to reflect Council's obligation under the relevant child safety and protection legislation and as an initial response to the child safe standards recommended by the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse that will likely soon be embedded in New South Wales legislation.
Thank you very much. In relation to item 11.5, child safety policy, I would move the officer's recommendation outlined on page 155 of the business paper and declare that carried. Now, Acting General Manager, I understand there is a late item.
Yes, Mr May. It's a late item 8.2 for a legal services panel. Its purpose to advise Council. Before you do that.
And I'll declare that carried. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr May. The purpose to advise Council the intention to terminate the contracts of the current legal services panel and re-establish a new panel through a tender process. In late 2017, Council sought tenders for the legal service panel for 3 years, which commenced from February 2018 for a 2-year period with a 2-year period option. In February 2021, a 2-year extension to each of the lawyers' contracts were exercised, commencing the 1st of March 2021, with the date of completion being the 28th of February 2023, and that's a correction that needs to be made within the paper. It actually had 2021. It was, in light of the recent organisational reviews, it is appropriate to refresh the Council's legal panel. The intention is to commence in June and report back to Council in its meeting in July 2021. And in the provision in the meantime, we use the local government procurement contract legal services for legal services whilst we undertake the contract negotiations.
So I got to, you've obviously discussed this with me, but item 2, how do you terminate the contract when, in my view, they don't have a contract because the council didn't resolve to exercise the option?
It is true, the 2-year extension should have gone back to council, it hasn't, but I think under a precautionary principle approach, I think it's appropriate we place that as part of the recommendation.
Okay, this is yet another reason why the Minister has extended the term. We are finding these matters that have been dealt with by the former executive without reference to the elected body, and it's quite frankly, it's just not good enough. So you're proposing to terminate them all and to use local government procurement, and can I confirm that the tender process will be finalised while I'm still here before we go into caretaker mode? Thank you. In relation to the legal services panel, I'll read this recommendation because it's a late item. That 1, council undertake a tender process to re-establish a legal services panel. 2, clause 22 of the current panel member contracts, termination for any reason, be invoked to terminate the contracts of the current panel members. 3, provide written notice to panel members. And 4, council writes to existing panel members inviting them to, I think that should be, reapply. I declare that carried. Is there any further business? Well, Mr McMahon, this is your final meeting as Acting General Manager. Les agreed to act in this position for 6 weeks and he's been here for 3 months. On behalf of the Wingecarribee community, and more importantly the staff of this council, I publicly record appreciation for the great work you've done in helping to restore confidence in the council. You've made some very tough decisions, often in very difficult circumstances. Personally, to me, you've been a safe pair of hands in whom I've had total confidence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you and well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And may I just address, if I can, Mr. May, I really appreciated the experience I've learned from Mr. May from his 10 years as administrator in other councils, and I thank the community for their support whilst I'm here, and the staff, most appropriately. They've been incredible staff, and it's going to be hard to give you guys up, but I should be back to say hello.
Declare the meeting closed. Thank you.